Hi, this is Mr. West, and today we're doing a walkthrough video on Factorizing Quadratic Equations Sheet 5. This is from Math-Salamanders.com. Tons of great resources on Math-Salamanders, so make sure to check them out. For this exercise, we're going to be factoring and then solving these quadratics, and I'm going to show you what that means. I'm going to give a quick rundown on what factoring is. If you need more support, I have more videos on my channel. And then I'm going to roll into what is solving those equations. And then we'll go from there, okay? So it's not going to be too bad. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. So the bottom line is we have what's called a trinomial here. Okay, I'm going to write this in purple. And to factor it, essentially what we're doing is we're looking for two things that multiply together to get us that trinomial. And almost always, for most, it's going to be two binomials multiplied together. And it's a binomial because it has two terms. So if we have two binomials and they're multiplied together, oftentimes it will create a trinomial, okay? So if we're looking at a trinomial, we have a first, middle, and last term. Let me highlight that real quick. So here's our last term. Our middle term we'll label in purple, and then the first term in green. So there's a pattern with trinomials and factoring them into binomials, and it's this. If we have the first term in the binomial. So now I'm concentrating on the binomials that are in two parentheses. If I multiply the two first slots together, and I like to call this the first slot in the parenthesis. Okay, if we multiply those two first slots together, we're going to get the first term in the trinomial, that squared term. Okay, so if we multiply this x times this x, we're going to get x squared. Now, for the last term, so last term in the trinomial, in this case, it's 6 for number 1. Or sorry, I should say minus 6 for number 1. We're going to multiply the numbers in the second slot in the parentheses for the binomial. Okay, so if we're trying to go from a trinomial, this, and we want to say, what two things multiply together, what two binomials multiply together to get us x squared plus x minus 6. Now we're looking at the second slot in the binomial. So those two things, right here and right here, need to multiply together to give me negative 6. So that will give me my last term. Now the middle term is a result of, well, you first have to do the process of what the factors of the first and last term. The first and the last term. That's the first step to find those factors. But now we're going to do what factors, when you add them up together, will equal the middle term. So it seems like a lot of maybe higher level math, but it's really not that bad. Take a look. So if we're looking at this one, we already knew that x times x were our only factors for x squared. There's nothing else that you can multiply to get x squared. X squared, which I like to put a box around my terms, the only factors that I have are x and x. That's why we have to go here. And when you're thinking about why we going backwards like that, it's because when you have something like FOIL, and I'm just creating an example here, you do first, outside, inside, last, like that. That's the process of multiplying, or double distribution, however you want to call it. So we're just kind of going backwards from there, what two terms multiply together to get us the first term. Now we're talking about what two terms multiply together to get us the last term. So let me move that over here. The last term is minus 6. So what are our factors of minus 6? We have a couple. We have positive 3 times negative 2. We have negative 3 times positive 2. We have negative 6 times positive 1, and positive 6 times a negative 1. So we have some options, but we're trying to decide, based on my little diagram here, it's not perfect, but it gives us the idea, which of those terms add up together to get us our middle term. Well, it looks like it doesn't, it's just x, but really it's a 1x. So we're thinking to ourselves, what factors of negative 6 will add up to positive 1? So this will add up to, the bottom one will add up to positive 5. That's no good. And then likewise, that one's going to add up to negative 5. This one will add up to negative 1, and this is the only one that will add up to a positive 1. So let me go ahead and write that in. So instead of those blanks, now I can say that this is equal to minus 2 and positive 3. And notice how I had to put the 2 here because there was already a minus sign. So just keep that in mind. Now, why does that work? Let's go over why that works real fast. If I were to multiply this out, x plus 3 and then x minus 2, I would do first, that's x squared. Those are multiplied together. This is the rules for multiplying binomials. Outside, minus 2x. Inside, plus 3x last, minus 6. 3 times negative 2, minus 6. The middle terms are always going to combine, or almost always going to combine. I get 1x, x squared, plus 1x, minus 6. That's what we started with, okay? So that's a way we can check our answer. All right, now that we have kind of the idea, I'm going to go fast for that factorizing part, and I'm going to kind of show you, not kind of show you, I am going to show you how we can solve this now. What values will make this true? So it says equal to 0, and we want to know what are the values of x that will make that equal to 0. So let me rewrite it real quick. So we have x plus 3 and x minus 2. Essentially, this is the rule, is if we have this parenthesis equals 0, it doesn't matter what the other parenthesis is. So if I had this equal to 0, let me change that to green actually. If I had this first parenthesis equals 0, so I put some value in for x and it equals 0, it doesn't matter what this other parenthesis is. It could be 999. It's still going to be equal to 0 because 0 times anything is going to be equal to 0. Okay, so all I need to do is separately handle each one of these parentheses. What will make this parenthesis on the left equal 0? So I know x plus 3, I want it to be equal to 0. It's a one-step equation. I get x equals negative 3. So negative 3 is one of my values that will make that go to 0. The other value, okay, we need to look at the other parenthesis. What will make that parenthesis go to 0? We go x minus 2. What will make that equal 0? Okay, because if this is 0, it doesn't matter if this first parenthesis is 722. If I have 722 times 0, it's going to be equal to 0. So I add 2 to both sides, and I get x equals 2. Those are my two options. Okay, x could equal negative 3 or could equal positive 2. Let me show you why real fast, and then I'm going to really get into these problems, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just show that negative 3 plus 3, and then I put negative 3 minus 2, and that's going to be equal to 0, okay? So on the right, we get negative 5, okay? So far, not so good, but doesn't matter because negative 3 plus 3 equals 0. 0 times negative 5 does in fact equal 0. And we get the same thing with positive 2. So when we plug in a positive 2, okay, so if we plug in positive 2, we're going to get 5 over there. We get 0 on the right, and we get 5 times 0 does in fact equal 0, okay? So that's how you solve this. You do each parenthesis on its own, what will make that equal to 0. Let's proceed from here with this understanding. Okay, so the first step, if I'm trying to factor a trinomial, is I'm going to put 2 parentheses down, okay? I know that this is my first term, and I know that these two things in the first slot need to multiply together to give me y squared. Well, I know my only factors for y squared are y times y, so I can confidently put y and y right there, okay? Looks a little goofy with that highlight. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Now, my second step is going to be minus 5. What are the factors of minus 5? I either have negative 5 and positive 1, positive 5 and negative 1. Keep in mind, we need to decide which of these factors has a sum of positive 4, because that is the middle term right there, positive 4y. Keep in mind that we're going to be multiplying by those y's, so really just need to think about the coefficients here. Don't need to really worry about the y. We just do 5 plus negative 1 does in fact equal 4, so I'm going to go plus 5 and then minus 1. A lot of students have trouble with just that first step. Okay, but the second step, even if you didn't understand how to get there, the second step is pretty intuitive. Okay, what plus 5 equals 0? We want either one of these parentheses to go to 0. So this parenthesis or this parenthesis can equal 0, and it's going to be a true statement. Well, I know 1 minus 1 is going to be equal to 0, so y can equal 1. And then negative 5 plus 5, we're just looking at opposites essentially, is going to be equal to 0. So I know it's going to be positive 1 or negative 5. And that's my answer, okay? So that's the format. We can go through all of these. We're going to see some patterns as we go along. I'm going to go quicker and quicker as we go, okay? So if you need anything really explained, just leave a comment, and I can help you out with it. And I'm also going to go to one color just to speed things along also, okay? So, again, parentheses. This is for number 3. Whoops. For number 3. Okay, so z and z will give me z squared. That one is obvious, okay? So right there, first slot. Then my second slot is going to go for the last term. What times what will give me negative 8? Okay, for this one, I'm actually going to write it out. I can't do it all in my head. It makes a lot more sense to write it out. So I have a negative 4, positive 2, positive 4, negative 2. I'm actually going to stop there because I realize that this first one, negative 4 plus positive 2, will give me negative 2. Okay, so I can just say negative 4 times positive 2 will equal negative 8 for my last term. And when I multiply the inside and outside terms, that's inside and outside terms, I'm going to get 2z plus negative 4z, which equals negative 2z. That's my middle term. That's all I need. Set it equal to 0. Okay, so now z equals, what does it equal? Positive 4, because 4 minus 4, let me zoom in here, 4 minus 4 equals 0, or negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 equals 0. It's as simple as that. You're essentially just looking at the opposite of what you see in the parentheses, and that is the solution to the quadratic. All right, let's move on to number 4. So we have a and a. Okay, that much should be apparent at this point. And all of these are going to be like that. When the first term has a coefficient of 1, it's much easier. Okay, it's when it doesn't that it gets a little tricky. And then we need factors of negative 6 that will add up to negative 5. And that's going to be negative 6 and plus 1. Negative 6 times a positive 1 will give me negative 6. And then negative 6 plus 1 will give me that negative 5. And I'm done with the setup. Now I need to solve. So I know a equals negative 1 and also positive 6. Okay, we're not going to do all of these, but we are going to do a few more. The ones that are easiest are all positive, okay? These are the easy ones because we know if it's all positive, it's going to have 2 plus signs in the parentheses. Then we have e, and we're going to have e. And then factors of 9, that will add up to 6. Well, that is 3 and 3. And this one's going to be a double root. So we have e equals negative 3. Or you could write or negative 3. Technically, it is a double root, but since it's just negative 3, we can just probably leave it as e equals negative 3. That's our only solution. All right, let me talk about number 10. I'm sure this is probably confusing people. G squared minus 4. Well, where's the middle term? Anytime you don't see the middle term, this is what you can do. Rewrite it so it does have a middle term. Well, how do you do that? You do that by saying it's going to be 0 times that variable, okay? When you have 0 times a variable, it essentially just disappears. So you can just do 0g for this one. G squared plus 0g minus 4 equals 0. Well, I'm going to put my 2 parentheses again. Okay, my parentheses could use some work. I have g and g. And then what are my factors of negative 4 that add up to 0? Okay, not 4 and negative 1, not negative 1 and 4. How about negative 2 and positive 2? This is actually a special situation called difference of squares. Okay, so anytime you see this pattern, don't say, oh, this is not like the other things. It's a little different, okay? Just we has that extra step of realizing that there's a middle term that has a coefficient of 0, and then these two numbers need to add up to give you that 0. So negative 2 plus 2. And it's going to be like that for all difference of squares problems. All right, let's do one where it's negative in the middle and positive, so that's number 13. So we have j squared minus 8j plus 12. So put my parentheses, j and j, and then factors of 12 that are going to be positive, but the middle term is going to be negative. So guess what? Negative times negative will give me positive, and then 6 times 2 will give me 12, negative 6 times negative 2, but then also negative 6 plus negative 2 will give me negative 8. And that is going to be my factorization. Now, j is going to be equal to positive 6, because 6 minus 6 equals 0, and also positive 2. And that's going to be my answer for number 13. If you need more of these problems done, let me know. Hopefully this was sufficient, and it was a lot to cover in a short video. Make sure to check out some of my other videos if you need help, or leave a comment. Either way, I look forward to seeing you next time right here on Wes Explains Best.